Okay, we're in Microsoft Excel and we want to create a compound interest calculator. So I'm going to show you how to use the inbuilt future value function, but also how to use and create this custom function, which will create this table for you. It basically shows you the balance at the end of each month. Just quickly show you how to use it. So you specify your initial value, then your annual rate of return, the term in years, your monthly deposit, and then whether you're going to make the deposit at the start of the month or the end of the month. Close the bracket and it creates the table for you. If you change the deposit amount, it will automatically update the table. If you change the length of the investment, it's going to automatically extend the table. Let's see how this can be done. Okay, so let's see how to use this inbuilt future value function. Now, what I like about this screen tip is that you can click on the function name and it will create a help file for you on the right of your screen. And that's useful if you don't know what these arguments are actually asking for. So rate, we can see, is the interest rate per period. So this is an annual interest rate and our base period is month. So we need to divide that by 12, comma, N per, the total number of payment periods in annuity. So length of investment times 12, because again, our base period is month, comma, payment, the payment made each period, well, that's our monthly deposit value, comma, present value, so that's your initial investment value. Got that in B3. And then we've got type, where we've got 0, which is the end of the month, or 1 at the beginning of the month. If we wanted the beginning of the month, we'd have 1 there. Now you can see I get a negative value. So to fix that, what I've got to do is make both my monthly deposit value a negative value and my initial investment value a negative value. And then I get the correct answer. Now at the moment I'm hard coding this type value in, and I actually want it to relate to this drop down list where I can either choose start of month or end of month. Now to achieve that, I'm going to use the switch function. So my expression is what I'm interrogating, which is the value in B7. Value 1, well, let's say value 1 was start of month, comma, result 1. So if start of month is selected, I want to return 1, comma, value 2, end of month, which is the other option in the drop-down list, comma, result 2, well, that would be 0, 0 for the end of the month. And then you need to specify a default. So I say the default is 1, start of the month. That's if nothing is chosen in that drop-down list. So then I'll close the bracket for future value. And now, if I select a value from this drop-down, it changes the future value of my investment. Okay, let's move on to this table. I've initially typed the column headings in here, but ultimately the column headings will be returned by this function that we're going to create. So for the month number, I'm going to use the sequence function. So the number of rows we want is defined by the length of the investment. So it would be this value times 12 to get the number of months. And then we need to add 1 because our initial row is going to be 0 month, which equates to our initial investment. Columns, well, that's 1, so that's the default for that. Start would be 0. And step is 1, so that's the default for that. So I can leave it blank, press enter, and I get the months for my investment. If I change this to 2 years, I will get 24 months plus the 0 month. So the total deposits would be equal to the initial investment plus the month number times the monthly deposit value. Now, because I want this to spill with the month numbers, I'm going to put a hash after that D4 reference. Okay, so I'm going to skip over accrued interest and go straight to balance. And for that, we use future value again. So the rate is our annual interest rate divided by 12. NPER is the number of months. Now, in this context, we refer to the month number returned by our sequence function. And because we want this to spill, we put a hash after the reference to D4. PMT is the monthly deposit value. Present value is the initial investment value. And don't forget, both of these need to be negative values. And type, well, we can use that switch formula to specify that. Let's just copy it from our first future value formula. Press enter, and you can see that down there I'm getting the same answer as I've got here, but it has shown the balance at the end of each month. Now, accrued interest, that'll be the balance minus the total deposit. Now, at the moment, I'm using 4 different formulas to produce this table. I want to reduce this to one let formula. So I'm going to start in this first column here, and I'm going to say equals let, open bracket, and then I'm going to come down on a new line. That's not mandatory that you do that, but it does make the layout of the formula a little bit easier to read. So what I'm going to do with the let is give a series of names to a series of values, and the values are going to be returned by these formulas. So I'll call this first value month numbers. That's returned by the sequence formula. So I put a comma at the end of that, and I need to state a calculation or an output at the end of let. So I'll come down on a new line and I'll say that that is month numbers. Come down on a new line again and close the bracket. So I'm getting the same result as sequence on its own, but let is going to enable us to join all of these formulas together. So my next step is to incorporate this formula, total deposits, into my let formula. So I'm going to copy that formula and add it to this let formula. So I'm going to come down on a new line after month numbers, and I'm going to call this value total deposit, comma, and then paste in the calculation. Now, in this calculation, we are referring to column D, which is where we're creating our current formula. So instead of referring to D4 hash, I refer to month numbers, comma. And now what I want to do is stack these 2 columns horizontally. So on this line, I'm going to write H stack. And I've got month numbers as my first column, and then total deposit as my second column. Should have written a comma there, not a full stop. So if I press enter, so I'm getting the spill error, but if I delete the contents of this cell, you'll see that I am getting those 2 columns now, and that's the result of one formula. So next I'm going to incorporate the balance. So let's copy this formula, go back to our let, we'll create another new line here. So we'll call this balance, and then paste in our formula. Now again, D4 is basically the result of our sequence formula, and we've called that month numbers, but everything else can remain as it is, but we do need to include the balance in our H stack, and I do need a comma at the end of this calculation. So if I press enter and I delete this spill, you can see I'm getting those 3 columns. Ignore this one here. So the let function is now returning 3 columns. So all I need to do now is work out the accrued interest. So do that after balance. So we'll call this accrued interest. And the formula will be balance minus total deposit. And I need to put a comma at the end of that. And then I need to put this name in my H stack. And then if I press enter, I'm getting the spill error until I get rid of this, but you can see it is now producing that whole table with that one formula. Now, at the moment, this is quite an involved formula for you to use again or for someone else to use it. So what we can do is save this as a LAMBDA function, a custom function that will be really easy to use. The end user will just need to specify the variables from this table and it will automatically produce this table. So we're going to put let in lambda. And what I need to do is specify all of the arguments or the parameters for this new formula. So we've got initial investment, comma, then we've got annual interest rate, I'll just call it annual rate, comma, then we've got term, and that's in years, comma, we've got monthly deposit, and then deposit made beginning or end of month. So those are my arguments. I type in a comma after that, and then I'm going to bring let down on a new line. Now what I need to do is swap out these cell references and in their place enter these argument or parameter names. So if we start with B5, that refers to the length of the investment, and I've called that term years. So I'm going to copy that and paste over B5. Now B3 refers to the initial investment value, and you can see I've named that here. So I'll copy that and paste over B3. Then B6 refers to the monthly deposit, and there's the name I created for that variable. And you can see what I've got to do. I've got to do that for each of these cell references. So I'll just go through the rest quickly for you. So the thing to check for there is that you've got no cell addresses in your formula and they've all been replaced by these parameter names, which is the case here. So the last thing I have to do is just put a closed bracket for lambda, and then I press enter. Now you do get the calc error because you can't use those lambda functions directly within the worksheet. So what we do is we copy this formula, and then we go to the Formulas tab on the ribbon, you go to Name Manager, you can see my old formula there, we'll create a new version of it. So just for brevity, we'll call this CI, compound interest, and then we'll paste in our formula into the refers to box. Click on OK, and then click on Close. So now, if I type equals CI, open bracket, there are my parameter or argument names. So I've got my initial investment, got my annual rate, term in years, monthly deposit, deposit made. And if I close the bracket and press enter, it returns that table. Now what I haven't done for you is included the column headings within the formula. So what I'm going to do is go back to the formula in the Name Manager, edit that named lambda function, and I'm going to click into this refers to box and select the formula and copy it, and then just cancel out of this. So then I'm going to paste the formula into an empty cell, and this is where I can edit it. Now just to make it easier to read, I'm going to add the line breaks back into the formula. And I'm going to add another name to my let function, headings, and I'm going to use hstack to stack my headings. And the headings are month, comma, total deposit, comma, accrued interest, and lastly balance, comma. Now I'm now going to give a name to our hstack down here. I'll call it calc for calculations. And then my final calculation in let is going to be a vstack. And I'm going to vstack the headings and the calc, not forgetting my comma at the end of this line. And then I'm going to select this new version of the lambda function, copy it, go to my Name Manager and edit the function that I'm working on and paste over the existing formula. So if I delete what's currently up there and move this into position, you can now see my formula includes the column headings.